And we're on. Welcome. Welcome to our Tuesday night podcast. This is Not Your Ordinary Church. We're over here in San Carlos. For those of you joining us for the first time, we are very glad you're joining us. And just so you know a little bit about how this works, we have a topic and I ask the questions. Pastor Ford, who joins me every Tuesday for this podcast, answers these questions. None of this is scripted. I come up with the questions throughout the week based on the topic, and Pastor Ford gets to answer from the heart. And so that being said, we actually welcome your questions as well. If you have a chat box available on your browser, you can ask those questions there. And it doesn't matter if they're on topic, off topic. Some of them we might not get to right away. There is a little bit of a delay, so throw them in there. Don't be shy. Ask questions. And you will get answers tonight. So tonight, the topic title is E for Effort. And I'm sure many people have heard that phrase before, but I first heard it when I first became an electrician because I didn't know anything about the trade. And I had a journeyman who was the guy who got me the job. He was actually my girlfriend at the time. He was her brother. And so he was like this highly intelligent failure of a person. I mean, in all respects, he graduated high school, but never did anything past that. And I mean, just had this wealth of knowledge and understanding, loved to read, was a very, very good electrician, and had this like natural intelligence. He was just, I mean, I'm sure you've met people like this, just very smart guy. But every single time I messed up or did something extremely stupid, which I did a ton of, he used to, sometimes he'd pat me on the head and very smart aleck look on his face. He'd go, "You get an E for effort, buddy." And then he'd turn around and walk away, or he'd correct me and do the job for me or something like that, or teach me how to do it correctly. And I learned a lot of really hard lessons that way. I did learn how to be an electrician. I remember thinking I knew something at a certain point, and every single time he would humble me. But this idea of E for effort, I'd put all this effort into something, thinking it's the right thing to do, only to have somebody who knew more just go, "Yeah, that looked cute, but that was wrong." And so the reason why I share that illustration is because we live in the San Francisco Bay Area. More specifically, we live in the Silicon Valley. And this isn't unique to Silicon Valley, but the hustle and bustle of life here is incredible. You have effort and labor and work and intention and people striving and real go-getters, real intelligent ingenuity people that just have this drive to move forward in anything they're doing. And whatever it is they're doing, they do a lot of it, right? And it's interesting because that's how the church is supposed to look as well. There's effort, there's things, people sacrifice their time. They sacrifice their Sundays, they sacrifice Saturdays, Friday nights, Thursday nights, Wednesday nights. We're here on every single Tuesday night. We put time and effort into what we do. You study on a regular basis for sermons you preach 3 times a week, which is an incredible amount of effort. For anybody that's ever done it, you know how hard it is to put together a sermon. Having to do it 3 times a week is a ton of effort. But the question is, what effort really matters? Because you have these kind of two worlds that almost, align parallel. They're like, you have the kingdom of God, Christianity, and you have the rest of the world. And although those two worlds are intertwined and they're very related to each other, there's scriptures in the Bible that are very interesting to me. We've quoted one in Matthew 7 before. He talks about Jesus. This is Jesus talking. He says that people are going to stand before him one day and say, "Lord, Lord, have we not done many wonderful works in your name?" And he's going to say, "And I will say to them in that day, 'Depart from me, I never knew you, you who worked iniquity.'" And then there's another scripture in Luke 10. I won't read the whole scripture, but basically there's this woman, her name's Martha, and she receives Jesus and his disciples into her house, and she begins to serve. And so she's laboring, she's putting all this time and effort and making sure everybody's taken care of. She's caring for people. She's, I imagine, probably serving food. I don't know if she's washing people's feet, but she's getting tired, and she looks over at her sister, Mary, who's sitting at the feet of Jesus and listening to him talk. And she actually gets irritated and says, "Jesus, tell her to help me. Can't you see I'm busy and I'm doing?" And then he actually tells her that she has chosen the better thing and you're laboring for things that basically don't matter. This is not what matters. What she is choosing is what matters, and I'm not going to take that from her. And so I summarized all that just to say, what effort in life really matters the most?
Well, I don't know that you can just do that. I don't think you can just go to one singular thing and say that this is the effort that really matters. But as it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, the end of Ecclesiastes, after Solomon has done everything, and we've talked about this a lot over the weekend, that it's matters is fearing God, keeping His commandments, because this is the all of man. And the wording of that, when you go back into the original language, the idea is that this is everything. Serving God literally is everything. And the only way, tragically, the only way to actually discover that is when we're too old to do anything about it. And that's one of the saddest elements of things, is that element of reality that when people get to a certain age, a lot of the great men, the current great men, are, with the exception, just kind of running around in my mind, with the exception of Warren Buffett, most of them are, 30s, 40s, and then you've got Bill Gates in his 60s, and then you've got Warren Buffett, at 80 something. I can't remember exactly how old he is, but so you're looking at people that this is it. But if you look at Warren Buffett, he's a wealthy man, and people want to be around him. But what is his life's actual worth? When he dies, which that's always the important thing, is when he dies, what will he be remembered for? He's only known from the standpoint of being a whiz at investments, and so there's not going to be a lot that he's going to be remembered for beyond that, because he doesn't have any. There's not any real outstanding elements to his life in terms of things that he has created, because he's just, I'm just trying to work through in my mind how to summarize it. It's just, there's nothing, there really is nothing. And so that, here's a guy who really does tell us that the thing that's the most important in life is fearing God and keeping His commandments, because, now he's at the end of his life, and it will be for what? What will be the measure, that you'll use for his life? All the effort and energy that he's put into investing all these years in creating wealth. That's really all he's known for, is the guy who creates wealth. So what? Because we have these, in the example I use in Matthew, when he's talking about, those who say, Lord, Lord to me, we're talking about people who, and they say it, have we not done many wonderful works in your name? And so how do you go from, because, efforts in Christianity and in the world they're not really different. They're all Christians should work jobs. Matter of fact, the Bible is very specific about, working a job is your responsibility, supplying for your family, being able to make money and have good reputation and stuff like that. These are all things that are normal in the world. Having a good reputation is not unique to Christianity. It has high value even in the world outside of Christianity. And so, but how do you, because that's kind of, it's kind of a sobering thought to think. We've talked about this before, but it's a sobering thought to think that you can be doing a lot of things that you think are the right thing to do. And then one day, like you said, either you're old and you look back and you go, wow, I can't change it. It's all been worth nothing. Or you stand before God, which is the final moment. And He says, you've been working iniquity. How do you know that your labors aren't in vain, in a sense? How do you know that your labors aren't in vain?
Yeah.
It's interesting, because there's a question, is it important to be remembered? And I think that is the
the thing, isn't it? Is that element of as you're living, when you are going to leave this earth, how are you seeing yourself? What is because the issue, it's a good question. Is it important to be remembered? And I think the short answer is absolutely yes. But the reason is because of the issue of legacy. What are you leaving behind for those that are coming up after you? And I think that's an element that I think is very, very critical. Something that most young people don't even think about. It doesn't even cross their minds. It didn't cross my mind for sure. As a young person, the idea of what am I leaving behind? But as you start to get older, you begin to realize that is a fundamental. What am I going to leave behind when I leave this planet? It's almost something I think that is inherent in every person. And so how do you know if your labor is not in vain? You'll be leaving something behind, that's going to live beyond your years. And, you can see people who make toys, I use this comparison a lot, but people who make toys, toys come and go. When I talk about toys, I'm talking about, stuff that people just use for pleasure. It's not, I know that things get used, like you could talk about the importance of the technology, behind a thing. But many of the people that have made things successful, it's not so much that they've made the technology successful, which is beneficial to life. It's that they've made the item successful. Like, for example, the iPhone. There are lots of companies that make cell phones, and there were cell phones that were being made before iPhones came out. Mm-hmm. And so Apple didn't create the first cell phone. And so that's not really a celebration of technology. It's a celebration of a toy. And it's not that it's a problem. It's just simply the reality of the fact that you're not really leaving something behind when you're making toys. And so a lot of the things that, especially for us in the Bay Area, a lot of the things the startup companies are coming up with, a lot of this stuff is really cool stuff. But the technology is really what's valuable. It's not the stuff itself. And I think a lot of these companies that make this stuff, they understand that. It's the development of the technology, but what becomes well known is the toy that possesses the technology. But so that, I think, is the answer to the question is, how do you know if your labor has been in vain or not, is that there's something left behind. There's a legacy that has been left behind of your life that other people can learn from.
So there's, I'm trying to think of like how to ask the question, but so, okay, let's look at like Thomas Edison for a minute. Thomas Edison, you could say he left behind a legacy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But was that really like worth it?
You mean for him or for us?
We're thinking about, of course, we're benefiting from that. I'm not talking about it from that standpoint, but we're talking about people standing before God one day, right?
Oh, okay.
And we're talking about what's going to last into eternity. Right, this whole idea of there are people who labor for a legacy here that might last on the earth as long as the earth lasts, right? But how do you know that matters when you're gone?
Okay, so putting it into the other side, not so much what matters when you're gone, it's when you arrive on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that element of things is using Thomas Edison is a good example because Thomas Edison also had faith as well as was and there's others like him, Louis Pasteur and others that had faith and were significant left behind legacy. And so you leave behind your legacy, but what you take forward is your character. And so that's the thing. But you're not necessarily going to be remembered for your character. You will be by those who are close to you, but I say that, and as I'm saying it, I'm qualifying it in my mind because there are people like Winston Churchill who, character, strength of tenacity and, and those kinds of things. But yeah, you can dance around the edges of that as well. And you can start saying, well, what about this or what about that or whether the other thing, and so yes, character is important. Who you are is important, but going forward from this life is going to be, how has your life affected other people's eternity? That's the thing that's going to be the most important.
Can you have both? Can you leave behind a legacy on earth and take something forward with you?
Yes, if your legacy is like Billy Graham.
Okay.
Okay. Because that's your
name somebody else. So we can pick out, one or two people that are very easy. Like I would, maybe I'm wrong. I'm throwing this out there randomly, but Charles Spurgeon. Do you honestly think that like a lot of people really know who he is outside the Christian world?
Do I think a lot of people know
who Charles Spurgeon is?
Oh, Charles Spurgeon.
Yeah.
No. The legacy element of Charles Spurgeon life is going to be specifically focused on the popularity of the day,
right,
as it were. Like legacy does require popularity. Like, few people know who I wasn't planning on going here. Who invented the internet? Nobody knows. Al Gore thinks he did, but he didn't.
Yeah.
But those kinds of people that are actually the real movers and shakers are usually people that weren't, they didn't set out to actually to achieve what they achieved. They were just like inventive people.
Yeah.
And this was one of their many things. Like Thomas Edison had tons of patents.
Yeah.
On things, and it's just the electric light bulb was just one of them. It's like he had phonograph, and I mean, I think it was something like on the neighborhood of 1,000 or several thousand patents that he had. Actual credited to him. I think it was 1,000, if I remember correctly. But most people don't even know most of those things because they're they were, some of them were toys. But
Yeah.
they were technology as well. But the toy was what became more popular than the technology. But anyway, so yeah, to answer your question, I don't think, the truth of the matter is that when we stand in eternity, this is the great thing about salvation, is the heroes in eternity are not going to be the heroes here in this life.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part. There will be a few that will have been able to do both.
So in a sense, we are drawing a line here. That's kind of what I'm after.
Well, I didn't want to go that far. That's why I said that. But there is because you have to take away from one for the other.
Yeah.
I mean, even Jesus. Jesus himself wasn't. He's not notorious for his revolutionary ideas. Even though his ideas were very revolutionary, but they were revolutionary from the standpoint of God. Mm-hmm. He's the only one who ever improved on the Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. But nobody would really notice that because the idea of the Ten Commandments is something that is sort of looked at negatively, even from a biblical perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, Jesus' improvement for mankind, that legacy that he left behind of the improving of the Ten Commandments isn't going to be up there at the top of the list, mm-hmm. because there are so many other things that he did that eclipse that. But they're only, like dying for our sins and raising from the dead and those kinds of things. But again, those things are only spiritual, elements, and so they're not something that's going to capture the attention of the world as a whole. Mm-hmm. They're going to be more focused on individuals who are Christians,
mm-hmm.
for the most part.
So that's kind of why I want to ask these questions, because there's.
So you probably shouldn't go too far past this. We'll lose the question.
Actually, I was just going to say
okay.
This question that Brian's asking here. I wanted to ask Brian if what we've just been talking about answers the question, but he's specifically saying, and you can answer more specifically if you want.
Yeah.
When Thomas Edison's works were tested by fire or with fire, did the light bulb mean anything?
I don't think the light bulb did. Yeah, not the light bulb itself specifically, because it's just something that's going to pass away. But I think that there's some factors there that even Thomas Edison admits in his writings of God inspiration. And so so there is an element of that that's there. It's going to have some measure. I wouldn't say that I think probably more the patent on the light bulb is probably the greater of the rewards, as it were. But there is going to definitely be rewards in relationship to his faithfulness, to his obedience, to his calling. These kinds of elements as well, I think are going to play into it, character, those kinds of things. But they're more that makes the light bulb itself not front and center. That kind of pushes off to the side.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that it doesn't mean anything.
Right. So that's kind of what I'm after, is because we talked about this in the last podcast as well, and which is kind of where this stems from, but the idea of having like a destination and then how you get there, and then knowing that, I'm putting a lot of effort in, and not only is God going to approve, but he does approve. And so at the end of the day, and to Brian's question is, things are going to be tested by fire. Works are going to be tested by fire. And so what does that really mean for man in general?
Well, the works, that particular scripture talks about the criteria is going to be whether it was made out of gold, silver, precious stones, which is a representative of eternal things, or wood, hay, straw,
right,
which is this life things. And so that really is the issue, is the this life things are going to burn up. They're not going to have any, the heaven isn't going to care about technology. It's not going to care about the toys that have been made. It's not going to care about any of those. It's not going to care about wealth that has been appropriated, or developed, or whatever. None of those things are going to have eternal rewards. It's going to be the gold, silver, precious stone things, which is going to be the efforts and energies that went into eternal issues. And so we want to, we don't want to be too narrow of talking about the idea of eternal issues, because eternal issues is not exclusively the salvation of people. That is too narrow.
Right.
It includes that, but it's too narrow. There are other factors that are eternal as well. Our own character, that we have developed. Have we been an example to other people of character as a Christian? One of the things that to me is probably going to be the weeder, where the Bible talks about not all who say, Lord, Lord, shall inherit the kingdom of God, will be the lack of character by people who claim to be Christians. And that lack of character will be their undoing. No, I thought, I've done all these great things, in your name. Well, yeah, you did, but you lacked character.
Give me an example of that. Like explain the person there that's listening. Try to like describe what that person looks like. What did their life look like? These are people who are doing things, and in their minds, I'm doing this in God's name. I mean, are these like, are these the crusaders standing before God? This is in the name of God, but we're killing people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about here? Like,
not exclusively, but it'll be along those lines of people who were doing things in the name of God, quote unquote, but that God never told them to do. And that's a very, very important element, because the idea of lawlessness, because that's the accusation in Matthew that is referred to as the issue of lawlessness. You workers of iniquity, it says, you lawless people. And so the idea is people who didn't have a focus on obedience, and when we talk about obedience, obedience isn't, I don't think we ever get past the idea of obedience being a more than, what we learned as children. Do what your parents say, the 5 things that your parents have told you to do all of your life. So we get this idea that obedience is like these 5 things, and so as long as I don't do this or that or that or that or that or that, and as long as I do this and do this and do this and do this, then I'm obedient. No, the idea of obedience is so much larger than that. It's time and place. It's because there's some things that are right in the right place and they're wrong in the wrong place, but they're the same thing. So there's so much more to the idea of obedience than just simply the idea that just, forget it. It's a 5 or 6 things that we do, and that's all there is to it. And so a life of obedience is, Jesus says, I always do those things that please my Father. That's what a life of obedience looks like. And so what we're talking about is we're talking about people that they didn't care about that. They were not, all they care about is checking the boxes. They didn't care whether or not they were being pleasing to God. All they cared about is, am I doing the things that I think I should be doing so I can go to heaven? Mm-hmm. And it's all based on them, and their interpretation of things.
Brian's in with, to use the light bulb again as a reference, is there an eternal difference between its invention to benefit people and make money, and inventing the light bulb just to benefit people or just to make money?
Yeah, I wouldn't, it's very difficult to try to qualify that. Now I'm going to be God here, and that's not an ideal situation to be in. But when I talk about the eternal elements of things, it will be more behind, what was the motivating factor, for these things. It's like, I think about, for example, if I'm going to work at a company and my job is to do a particular thing, well, I'm going to do that thing to the best of my ability, so that I can be an example to other people of what it means to be a Christian employed, and so it's it's not the thing itself, but it's the effort put into the thing that speaks integrity, honesty, attributes of godliness. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's more the issue. Is the personality, character, probably more character development or character example, behind those things, more than the thing itself.
So let's like look at just a couple like super practicals. There's the issue of giving and tithing and offering and stuff like that. This is obviously scripturally, this is an issue of obedience, but why do Christians do it? Is it purely out of obedience?
Well, that's
we're talking about in the context of effort.
Tithing is a good example of that, because there are a lot of churches that preach against tithing. They preach against it. When I say there are a lot of churches, I really mean religions. I don't really mean churches. These are just religions that are masquerading as churches. Because they're just, they have an agenda, usually denominational churches. And so the idea of tithing is not just to be sure that you've given your 10% of your money to God. The Bible talks about how God loves a cheerful giver. And so there's more criteria than just simply doing what you're told, when it comes to obedience. That we're kind of coming back to that idea again. And so, with tithing in particular, the idea of tithing or giving in general, Jesus says, give and it shall be given to you as you give. Okay, so that this is the idea, is as you give, is how it's going to be returned to you. So if you begrudgingly give because you are fulfilling some kind of obedience law, then God is going to reward you in kind with something having to do with an obedience law. In other words, there's not going to be, so you give your, $10.23 and there, I've done what I'm supposed to do. So, okay, fine. Well, God says, okay, well, I promised that I would not let you starve. So here's a few pinto beans, and just put them in water and you won't starve. I will have fulfilled my obligation to you like you have fulfilled your obligation to me. And so that's the idea, is to understand that God is looking for far more than just simply us checking boxes. Mm-hmm. And his pouring out his blessing and those kinds of things that you read in Malachi chapter 3 and other scriptures relating to that kind of thing. It really does have a lot to do with our approach to things as well as the thing itself. So.
That's interesting. You mentioned approach. What does that,
what is a good approach? I mean, you talked about the idea of like character and building character, and with, I mean, obviously this is more than just intentions, but kind of encompasses intentions. You're doing things with a certain intention. What does a good intention look like in God's eye? What really pleases God? What in man's efforts really pleases God?
Well, when I was working at a company, and when I first became a Christian, I was working at an entry-level job, working at Burger King. And so it was just do my job, do what I'm supposed to do, get there on time, meet whatever criteria is being given to me, not just minimal, but, is to the best of my ability. So I would come in and I would be an example. I wanted to be able to gain an opportunity to be able to share with people about Jesus. And so I wanted to make sure my testimony was sterling. I didn't want there to be anything that I did. I mean, to the point to where even when I made mistakes, and I knew I had made mistakes, I made it very, very clear. I went around to people and I remedied those mistakes. I remember one time, not related to the Burger King thing, but I was with friends, and they were trying to get an idea of, so you don't drink anymore because Christians don't drink. And I tried to help them to understand, because they were, Jesus drank wine and all this kind of stuff. And, and rather getting into all that stuff, I was like, listen, it isn't about the drinking, it's about getting drunk. And they were saying, well, yeah, but you don't drink at all. And it's because I choose not to drink at all. I want to be a good testimony. And I remember it kind of going backwards and forwards, and I grabbed a beer bottle out of the hand of the guy, and I drank some of it. And I said, there, are you satisfied? It's not that I'm not drinking at all ever, that I've somehow got this fear of alcohol or fear of beer. And after I did that, I felt really bad, because I didn't want to be, for him to use that, I caught Dave drinking, kind of a thing. And I felt really bad about it. And I told him, I said, listen, okay, so I'm sorry. And I apologize. And I said, that was wrong what I did. Okay. Because I only drank it to prove something to you. I didn't drink it because I was trying to help you. I was just trying to prove something to you. And so I'm sorry. He said, no, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And I said, no, it's not fine. I did it with a wrong attitude. My attitude about this was totally wrong. And so I explained that to them so that they would understand, and so that was everything, getting back to the whole Burger King idea, that was the thing, is I was a new Christian at the time. That's a question.
Yeah, there, Ryan.
Yeah, so I was a new Christian at the time. That was my first job after I had become a Christian. My first new job after becoming Christian. Because when I got saved, I had a job, but that which was a lesson learned as well. Because I had basically told my boss I wasn't going to work overtime, and I left, and everything I did was legit, but I learned a very valuable lesson there, is that doing what is required of you is not necessarily going to merit the favor of God, because I lost that job. I told them, you can't make me work overtime, and you can't fire me because I won't work overtime. And they said, heck, we can. And so I left to prove the point, and then they fired me, and God didn't come and vindicate me. And so I realized, that there's more to life than just simply checking boxes.
Okay, so what about the time that you put into, because there's like this level of sacrifice that and I'm saying this on purpose, that Christians, in a sense, they tout this, maybe it's not intentional, but you hear about it, and or maybe it's not always intentional, but this idea of people having left career opportunities, missing out on family events, and also they can do a work for God. Does God look at that, and is he pleased with that? And what is that, like, the right motivation?
Well, out of my own personal life, so I'm looking back now at 60 years, and I can see the favor and the grace and the hand of God all over my life, over the years, all over my family, over the years. And I can honestly say that I had to deal with every one of those things that you mentioned. The idea of missing family events. The only family events that I ever missed were the family events that were scheduled to be on Sunday, which I wouldn't miss church for. There are other days of the week that we could meet, and it made no sense to me that it had to be on Sunday when we had a full Saturday that most people don't work. If anybody doesn't work on Sunday, they probably don't work Saturday either. So it's not. It didn't make any sense to me, and I had to explain. Mostly these were with my mom, and I had to explain to her, listen, if you're going to have events on Sundays, I'm not going to be there, or I'm going to just kind of show up and then have to leave, because I won't be able to hang around. I'm going to get there late and I'll leave early because we've got services Sunday, and I'm a part of those and I'm involved in them. And at first it was like, well, why can't you just miss them? And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to miss them, because I that's for her sake, I'm not going to miss them, because I want her to understand that church is important to me. And so, because I want her to be saved. And so she needs to see that's important. How can somebody be saved if you've proven that it's unimportant, that being saved is unimportant to you? And so that's the kinds of things that you have to work through. And so missing events were not just, I don't go to things on Sunday. It wasn't like that. It was, I'm not going to miss the church services. And it was because of testimonies. And there have been times I had to fly for my job to Florida from Tucson over the weekend. And so I had to be there for Saturday. There's no way I was going to leave on Saturday morning, or how did it work? I think it was Friday night. Leave on Friday night, work all day Saturday, and then get home, in any kind of shape for a Sunday service would be impossible. And so I had to miss. I think I missed the Sunday morning service, for that. I can't remember if I did or not, but my point being is that it wasn't this thing of what I would never miss a service for nothing,
right?
Not some kind of legalistic thing. The idea was testimony, and so that so that's the balance between those things. And so it's not just I will never miss anything for church for things of this world. It wasn't like that. It was that's not going to help. But if it was something that I felt was making my commitment to God seem unimportant by observation to other people, I wasn't going to do that.
Why? Why go from one? Why not just go 2 times a week? Why 3 times a week? Like why is that like the?
Because it's important.
But why? Why? I mean, why is every service important? What do you get from every service?
Well, that's a funny question, because it's a question that does get answered or asked a lot. But it usually the assumption is this isn't important. Why are you making it so important? It's not why can't you miss these services and still be important? It's this isn't that important. You need to understand this is really not important, but you're making it important. That's more the thinking, because nobody says that about other things. Why don't you just work 4 days a week? Well, my job is 5 days a week. Yeah, but just tell them you want to work 4. You have 3 days off then. Why don't you just do that? It's the same thinking. It's the same logic, because the logic is basically saying that my job's not important, And so when are you going to realize this? And so working less means you have more time to do other things because your job's not important.
But I'm just going with that same argument. Isn't like, is church a requirement? Like work is a requirement. If you don't show up the 5th day, you're missing 8 hours. That's 8 hours of pay out of your check, right?
Okay.
And so do you get the same idea, same benefit from 3 extra or for 1 extra service a week?
That again, you're comparing something that some people think is important to something that some people don't think is important. And that's the problem, because there are people who would be looking at both of those situations and saying, I don't see any difference. Yeah, work 4 days a week. What the heck? You don't need the money.
Yeah.
You
What if
know.
you do need the money?
You don't need the money.
Why not?
How much money do you need?
Enough to live on, right?
And how much is that?
Depends on where you work.
No, it depends on a lot of things.
Depends on where you work, what position you have, how much you get paid.
How much your outgo is,
Yes.
etc. All
Yeah,
these kinds
yeah.
of things. How much discretionary income you need to have, you know, so that you can go play.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I can say that it's not that important.
So
you
it's
know.
just, is it always a matter of choice?
Is what always a matter of choice?
What's important to you? So do you go to church because, you know,
yeah, but
we're
that's
talking
not.
about like
But that doesn't answer to the question that you're asking of, because the idea, why do you need to go to church 3 times a week? The issue isn't you don't have to go to church 3 times a week, but the unfortunate reality is that we only have church 3 times a week.
Mhm.
Now, I'd love to have church 5 times a week.
Why is church important?
7 times a
why
week.
Why is church important to the Christian 3 times a week? To the Christian who makes it important, this is important.
Okay, to the Christian that finds it important to go to church 3 times a week is because they understand what church is. That church is meeting with God. That it's not just a religious event, you know, but that they're meeting with God. And so meeting with God 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 10 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, the more the better.
Yeah.
You know, like how people think about money.
Yeah.
You know, the more the better. I mean, that's why Jesus said you can't serve God and mammon, because that's a god.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what people would say. I don't think there's a single person that would not agree that the more the better when it comes to money. You know, that there's no amount of money that all of a sudden now becomes bad. Now, yeah, we can talk about the moral elements. If you're a loser or you've got some kind of deficiency of character, you know, but that's the problem. The problem isn't the money, because the more money, the better.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a reality. You know, if I was able to, you know, get a job where I work an hour a day and I make, $10,000 an hour, and I'll have to work 1 hour a month, and cool, you know, it's fine. You know, I would take that job over a 40-hour-a-week job, you know. But, you know, no, I can't do that because I have to work 40 hours. Because I have to, it's important to me to work. Maybe not, you know, if you're only in it for the money, you know. But if you're the guy who owns the company, you know, you're not working for the money.
Yeah.
You know, you're working for other reasons. So there's all kinds of factors in there.
Okay, Kay's got a question. So it sounds like caring about what others think of you as a Christian is necessary.
Oh, these questions that always have these, like, you know, binary responses. Yes.
You got to come up with a different word.
Yes. I think that's what I'll do from now on. I'll just answer it like that. Yes. Next question.
Isn't more about
No, seriously. You know, the idea of caring about what other people think of you as a Christian is part of Christianity. It is a part of Christianity. Yeah, definitely.
So
what?
yes.
So yes.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
I hope that answers your question.
But I don't like binary answers.
We should just have we used to have the intro where you, we should just have an intro.
That's all.
Don't be binary.
We could do a clip that we throw up there. Binary question.
Yes. Along with our theme music and our Jeopardy sounds and goodness.
There's a couple more questions.
We really could have fun with this. Yeah, I'm trying to get to him and you keep answering her question again. Okay. Isn't more about people have to go to work 5 times a week, but have a choice whether or not they go to church 3 times a week? So it's the one of the two where they have leeway. The mistake being that they think one is less important because they can choose.
Yes. Yeah, that is the issue. The issue is because you can choose something, then you should obviously choose the lazy answer. You know, and that's why do you do something 3 times a week that you don't have to? You know, it's It's like, if you're just going to reduce your life to the bare necessities, you're really not going to have much of a life.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. There's this interesting dynamic in Christian labor, and you read it all through the Bible. And it's interesting to me because there are some people who labor and can see you're smiling for something. Why are you smiling?
No, I'm smiling because of the laughing or the crying laughing face.
Kay's being a good sport right now.
Yeah, and I was going to make a comment of it's good to have people on here who have a sense of humor.
Yes, and a thick hide. Okay, so
see, she's from Rhode Island. That's the thing. I wish everybody was from Rhode Island. I get so tired of thin-skinned people.
I wish everybody said coffee like coffee. Fantastic.
All right, move on.
Okay, so in our last, we only have 14 minutes left, so you gotta be good with these answers here. But okay, there is a dynamic. Yes,
the answer is yes.
Done. See you guys next week. Join us tomorrow. Service Wednesday night. Okay, so seriously though, there's a scripture in the Bible. There's I think it's Mark. I have it down. Mark 5. Woman who has a flow of blood. She's got this medical issue, and the Bible says that she for 12 years has exhausted all resources, seen many doctors, many physicians, and has seen absolutely no difference. Right? And she goes and she pushes through a crowd, and in her mind she's thinking, if I just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, something might happen. Which is interesting to me because it almost seems like a long shot. She's just like, this is just the last ditch effort. Maybe something will happen. She goes and she touches Jesus and immediately is healed. Now, relatively, that was very little effort. And you can go into all the dynamics of the law.
I don't know if I'd say that.
No. Hold on. You can go into all the law, the things she had to go through, and mentally what this could cost her. If she does this, there could be punishment involved. There's all kinds of stuff here.
And the mere fact that she's bleeding.
Yeah. Okay.
Something about having, a flow of blood. This is not, we're not just talking, she's leaking. I wouldn't quite call that effort to go outside. I'm sure there's probably a trail
some kind of
going along.
Like,
she's probably losing quarts of blood as she's making her way to Jesus.
Killed the imagery here. This is not the direction I was hoping this conversation would go. Oh, goodness. Maybe I shouldn't have used this as an example. The Bible's really raw. It's fantastic. But how do you tap into God getting involved in your efforts? Now, the whole idea of giving is very interesting because you can work your butt off 5 days a week and give at the end of the week. And that work somehow changes. Your efforts have now become, for lack of a better term, empowered. Like God says, you give and I will get involved in your finances, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you labor in my name. Jesus says, not no one who's given lands or family for my sake, houses, lands, family for my name's sake, will not reap in this life and the next.
Yeah.
There's this idea of God doing something different in people's labors. We could talk about depression. We could talk about medical issues. We could talk about financial issues. We could talk about relationship issues that the world has all these pseudo solutions to solve when their problems are a really big deal, but they can't do anything about it. You can work your butt off like she did for 12 years, exhausted all her finances, many doctors, many angles, nothing happens. And one conversation or one event with Jesus totally changes all of that. How does one tap into, I'm saying this on purpose, supernatural power?
Well, that's you're saying how. I mean, that's the thing is that there's this element that that the effort is rewarded, because the effort is focused on eternal things.
How do you do that? Like, give me an example of how that works. Let's just say in your job.
Well, we've kind of been talking about it all along because the idea of your example to other people, that makes it spiritual. I was working for a company. It was, I went full spectrum here. I was working as a Burger King burger flipper when I first became a Christian, and then just before I became a pastor, I was actually working for a real company as a sort of engineering tech, and had kind of worked my way up because I only had associate's degree in school for tech work. And so, the end result of that was that I was working a job that I had responsibilities, and I was fulfilling those responsibilities joyfully. I mean, I did enjoy the job. I mean, that was without a doubt, and left a very good testimony. So that when I left there, and the reason why I left there, they could look at it and say, wow, here's a guy, he's a great tech, had his future lined out, going into, with this company, and decided he's going to chuck all that to go and become a pastor, in another country. And so they could see that there was, even though I was good at what I did, there was something more important. And I think this is the thing that is a very important element of many, the balance of true Christianity is when a Christian will work on a job and they will be the best at that job, even though it's not the most important thing in their lives, And so that, I think, really does express a very powerful testimony when you are giving your second best to a company and doing better than other people that are giving their first best. There's a real testimony in that, and I really mean that way. Mm-hmm. Is that's the idea. When I left that company, I left with my I still have the recommendations letters that were given to me. I didn't even ask for them because I'm going to England. I don't even care about any of this stuff because I'm going to be starting from scratch. Nobody's going to call at that time. That in that time, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no. I feel like the dark ages, but it was. There really wasn't
60 now, man.
It was like, well,
You've seen a lot of life.
There were light bulbs, and Thomas. I knew Thomas Edison personally. No. So but there wasn't a lot of communication things, and so I knew people weren't going to. You'd have to write a letter and send it to England. And by the time that letter made it way there and back, there'd have been no point. And they could have called on the phone, but they don't even know who I am, and there's no way to fact check anything.
Right.
They could be calling my mom.
Yeah.
My mom's. Oh yeah, no, he was a very good employee. So none of this stuff even mattered. But my boss wanted to write me a letter of recommendation anyway. He said, no, maybe you'll use it in the future. And when I left on a very good note. I left, gave my appropriate notice and everything like that. I didn't cut any corners on anything. And it's funny because that's been the testimony of my life, even from when I left my job at Burger King. I gave my full notice. I actually had an issue where I went home because I wanted to go to a concert that night. Here's some of these things that we're talking about that we've been talking about. So here's an exception to that rule of, not missing things, is I really wanted to go to a concert, and it was my last day. The concert was Saturday night. I love the concerts at church, and I was involved in the concert scene at church, and I wanted to go. But I had been working this job for like 2 or 3 months and had hardly a Saturday off and hadn't been able to go. So I was really excited. And so I asked if I could have the time off, and my boss said no. And I was like, dude, this is my last day. And so I talked to some of the other guys and got somebody that said they would happily work the shift for me so I could go. And so I went back, told my boss, and he told me, no, I want you to work it. And I thought, you're just doing this to get on me, and so I said, no, forget it then. I'm out. I don't need this job. I don't need your recommendation. I don't need anything. And I walked out. Now I was only a Christian for probably about 3 or 4 months at the time. But when I walked out and I'm on my way home, and all of a sudden, again, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. That was stupid. That was just stupid. You worked there. You had such a good testimony. And now you're going to throw it all in the toilet just so you can go to one concert. And I literally went home and I prayed. And I said, God, what do I do? I was walking distance from there. It was only 10 minutes walk. I prayed, and I felt God really dealt with me and said, go back. They're going to give you your job back, and you can finish out with a good testimony. And so that's what I did, is I went back, and my boss, I told him, I said, that was stupid. I shouldn't have gone. I want to finish my my shift. And he said, no, it's too late. It's all water under the bridge now and everything. And, I got to stick by my guns. That's was his exact words. And I told him, listen, I said, I'm a Christian. I said, and that was wrong. And I said, and I don't want to leave like that. I don't want to leave that way because I don't want that to be the way I'm remembered. And he looked at me and he just goes, okay, all right, you can finish out. And so he let me come, and God had told me that he was going to let me stay, but it took probably 5 or 10 minutes for me to convince him to let me stay. It was like, God said you were going to let me stay. I thought he was going to just say okay, but I said no, you got to. And he go, no, I can't. I got to stick to my guns. All this, and the reason why I'm sharing that is just the idea of that I was able to finish that shift, and even though I screwed up, I was able to leave a testimony, that I came back. I didn't have to. I came back and I corrected that issue, and so that's that kind of effort God rewards. That's what makes those kinds of things eternal, is because there's character associated with it. There are things that are involved. That woman that you mentioned, that faith, that she's willing to come out of the house in her condition, and the danger that was involved in all that. And she may not even make it to Jesus, because he was being, he was surrounded with people, and there was a push of crowd around him. And so that was, that was an eternal element that was associated there. And I think that's the issues that make things powerful or supernatural, is when they touch an eternal element. And that's what makes them supernatural.
So how do you describe that too? How do you, I don't want to say sell. I want, because in reality, in what we're talking about and what the Bible describes is that when people aren't saved, they don't have this, connection with Jesus, as it were. They're not living their lives from that standpoint of wanting to please God. They don't, if you just even if you don't believe, if you're listening to this and you don't believe, and you think about, a man getting baptized, and then all of a sudden this voice booming out of heaven, and you hear this voice saying, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased. I'm pleased with this man." I mean, that's incredible to actually have God say, "I'm pleased with this person," right? But then you have so many people who are like this woman before she touched Jesus. They've put tons of effort into life. They're pushing him. Steve Jobs, the guy was a workaholic, and many people like him, especially in Silicon Valley. But there's this effort being pushed so hard in one direction. But if we're honest, they're doing it all by themselves, all in their own efforts, all in their own ingenuity. And no matter how you look at it, God might be using the things they're doing, but without this intention that you're talking about of wanting to please God and wanting to do things God's way. God's not really involved like that, is he?
No, there's not. There's nothing valuable in terms of its value to humanity. Its value to because there's all this effort and energy that's being put in, and there are things that come out of it, but at the same time, it's for that person. That person isn't going to go, okay, well, I discovered something, and so I can leave now. If when there's not some kind of element of nice comment. Anyway, there has to be that element of that eternal element, because we are eternal creatures. And this is the thing, is I'm watching. I love my father-in-law dearly, and I'm watching now as he's in the latter years of his life. I had so much over the years. He was. I was going to say I had so much respect. I have a lot of respect, and I still have a lot of respect. That hasn't changed. My respect for him has gained over the years, but I find that respect is being tailored with sympathy. because now he's losing his strength, he's losing his mental acuteness. He's not Alzheimer's or anything like that. It's just simply, old timers.
Slowing down.
It's old timers.
Yeah.
It's what it is. It's not. It's not. It's just the reality. He's had some medical issues. He's been dealing with over the years, but yet his usefulness now is like, just watching baseball games. It's not really. There's not really anything more for him to do anymore. But yet he's still alive. But yet I look at him and I think how tragic that is, because if he had become a Christian, and which he has no determination to do, he's made it very clear he wants to die an atheist. But I look at, I think, his value, as even in his condition, as an example, as a Christian, he could still be very useful and productive, but that's lost now, because no matter what he says or does right now, it's always an old man with failing health. There's no reality that once he leaves this earth that there's anything more, and so to me, it's a real tragedy, that people will live like that. And so that's really what makes the effort worthwhile of being pleasing to God and living that way. You said all these things about how, non-believers don't do those things, but yet, well, there's a big price at the end of it all, and it's not just eternity in hell. It's all the time that leads up to the time before leaving this planet.
Okay, last question. Kenny Light, I'm not actually sure if that was a question or a statement, but if not directed towards the Most High, iniquity, borderline vanity. I guess that is a statement. Okay. So
no, it's that's probably a
typo.
What do you call it? One of those stupid correcting things.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, probably
Correct.
iniquity becomes vanity or something. But anyway, the idea of all that is true. I mean, that's the thing. If it's not directed towards Jesus, then it becomes a waste of time, no matter what it is. Yeah, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a workaholic, you're a alcoholic, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
There's, again, in this example of the woman, she's pressing through the crowd and she goes to touch Jesus. But then when she's healed, Jesus stops and turns around and said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples are even like, "Dude, everybody's touching you right now. There's throngs of people touching you." What made this woman different from the entire crowd?
Well, Jesus says it. It's her faith. He said, he mentions that to her. He kind of brings her out. Who was that? And let it be according to your faith, kind of a thing. And so that's the idea of when effort becomes supernatural is at that point. It's at the point of when you throw yourself into it, and you say, "Okay, I'm going to do this because I need." She needed that healing. It was either that or die. It's not the medical abilities of the time were not very good for her. She's hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
This is not just a woman who's having. Some have tried to describe it as female problems. No, she's hemorrhaging. And this is a real problem, and she's not gonna be able to keep doing that forever. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a problem, but she's able to break through, and get beyond that. And like we've been saying, it turned into something supernatural.
Yeah, very awesome. All right, we are out of time. Next week we will do this again. Thanks for the questions, guys, and we will. As always, if you are joining us for the first time, we really do appreciate you joining us. We put these on for you. We put this together for you guys. We want you to ask questions. Feel free to file those in. Share this with people. Send the link to folks. This isn't about a show. We don't get paid for this. We're not a monetized channel. we really do want to help people. Everything we're talking about today is reality. This isn't just hypothetical stuff. You can actually put this to the test and see it work for yourself. And we invite you to do that. And tomorrow we will be here in person. You can come and join us for our midweek service Wednesday night. We start at 7 o'clock. We open an hour early for prayer. You can come as early as you'd like within that time frame, but we start promptly at 7 o'clock. And so we invite you to join us, and you can find more information about us online, and we will see everybody soon.
Yeah, so before we go, I just had a thought. What would be a good idea is if you have anything that you want to see us cover, you can put it in the comments, and I'll see them, and I can pass them on to Jordan, and Jordan can work up a podcast on those particular topics if there's anything that you would like to hear about, especially if you're not a Christian, and there are issues that you would like to see us address. You can even put them in the form of a question, and we'll be glad to look at those. And even if there are things of differences of belief or whatever, I especially want to deal with those kinds of things. Anything that if we were able to talk face to face, you would want to see addressed, I would be quite happy for that.